So next thing what we are going to see is the scale. Okay, the scale of the game space actually includes the total size of the physical space, which is related to the size of the object in the game. How much zoom we can give, how much we can scale in, and how much we can scale out. So all these things will have an effect in the environment. So what is the total size of the physical shape? Okay, so we might have n number of objects. So every object should have a size, a particular size. So that relative size of the object in the game also should vary with respect to this physical space. Okay, so there should be a relativity between the environment. Yeah, how much scaling we can give. So you can see here in the image, I have scaled out to some extent, and it can be seen that every object has been in a particular shape, size. Here you can see that we have zoomed into that particular so this thing. So because simulation try to emulate reality, the space and objects in the genre should be scaled to a relative size. So it's kind of we are trying to emulate whatever the environment we are living in. When it comes to we are following a particular scenario. So if it's a fantasy, okay, fine. There will be a creative objects present. If it's a sci-fi, there will be a different type of objects present. So these are the things which will have a direct effect in the game. So when games involving first-person perspective, actually the view will be usually only containing within a few hundred feet of space. So scale will not be a major issue at that time. Okay. So when we are trying to have, for example, in shooting game, we are able to tend to see only few hundred feet. So that is one important thing. Okay. So when it important objects such as keys, weapons, ammunition, so should be exaggerated so that the player can easily see them. So for example, in Mass Effect or some action games, Call of Duty, we need to tend to showcase the whatever the weapon available, ammo. So we can able to have a box, big box. So key, we can specify with some notifications, all this stuff. We can able to tend to tell the player that okay, this is an interactive area where you can interact with a particular object. Okay, so in this way, you tend to tell the player that okay, whenever you are going to come across, you can interact with this. So it's not like that there is a small object present, the player cannot able to find that. There are many games where we can able to tend to say that players can't be able to find the object present in the environment. So there won't be any notification given, the objectives won't be clear. So that particular object present will not be, for example, we can have a glow effect around it. So in Assassin's Creed or Witcher, we can have a kind of interactive view which tells us that there is an interesting object present where we can able to interact. That kind of information, that kind of engine perspective based option is not given in many games. So it is very good to have that kind of a interaction. So this size plays a very important role in that time. Okay. So there is a difference between, for example, there is a metal attached to a stone. It is very difficult for us to find that particular metal. Okay. So texture plays an important role. I like it. So when it comes to scale exaggeration in Civilization 3, to represent the character, you can see that a human can be seen the same size as a tank, all these things. Okay. So easily manages. We need to click that player and we need to give the command for the player to travel from one tile to another tile. So it's a kind of a turn-based game. So you need to select the unit and we need to tell that unit to have an interaction. Okay. So how it's possible if I am going to have a human character which is reduced in size when compared to tank and flight, it is very difficult for us to select that particular character. Yeah. So with respect to games, for example, with the games with the aerial or isometric perspective, the scale should be distorted. Okay, so this will help us. This kind of scale extragation will help us to easily manage and select the event. So in Age of Empires, it will be very difficult to select a particular point because of its size. So the same, yeah. So for example, buildings are often just a little taller than the character in the game. Actually, it's making the height of the character appear to be exaggeration. So this allows the player to see the roofs of the building and the landscape. So without being unable to see the character, and it allows the unit to be shown that otherwise would be behind the building. So this kind of effect we can create. And physical space size of the in the game also can be distorted to accompany the player. Okay, so smaller, actually we can scale the space smaller so that the character only takes a few minutes to get from one end of the game world to the another. If the unless the object of the game is to explore the detailed environment. Okay, so these are certain things which we can able to work around. So in contrast, the game scale loses its distortion when a character walks into a building, interacts with objects within it. So because we need to make sure that we don't have this scaling and distortion effect too much. Okay, so for a particular area we can have that. For the particular area which doesn't have one needed, we can able to avoid that. Okay. So for example, a good example is city. If the player navigates the character quickly from place to place in the city, it may take time to explore interiors of the surrounding buildings that seems much larger by contrast. So this is a very good example. Okay. So GTA players will be, we need to use the player to search the surrounding. So it takes time. So it gives the meaning that you need to search around the place to complete this objective. Okay. So then comes one of the most important things is boundaries. Okay, as we discussed in the first class, boundaries make a game how a player from travel one place to how much control we will be having to that space. Okay, say as we can say so how much boundaries the game has, it can be either specified or but certain times it will not be revealed. Okay, so because since many games are not having infinite world because No Man's Sky which has a lot of things to get revealed or get explored. So there are very limited games which has very infinite world. Okay. So for example, football stadium, you can play with the players in that particular space. Okay. So we have discussed already. For example, a very good example is the flight simulation. So the flight, we cannot go beyond a particular height. It's kind of a spherical world motion which is given. Okay, the terrain, they can follow the particular terrain. So for example, mountain ranges, vegetation. Okay. So then comes realism. So when it comes to realism, actual photographic and land height data is used to create a realistic model for most flight simulations. For example, Flight Simulator 2002. So extra details will be given to trees, buildings, other traffic. Okay. So weather, depending on the weather, the space, the place, geometric details, the weather can be made into even more realistic. Okay. So considering how much detail you want to include in your game, you can add even for better speed and efficiency. Okay, so which can be programmed. Okay, so actually many simulation games tend to attempt the real world model, and the player often realize real world common senses for example football, basketball, all these things. And some even though all these game represent some abstraction and simplification of the real world, it's very difficult to adapt the real world. Okay, so in Getaway, 40 square kilometers of London were recreated using a over 20,000 digital photographs. Okay, covering everything from tourist hotspot to back alley, all this over skies, everything. Okay, So this provide instantly recognizable simulation of everyday life in their respective city. Okay. For example, power structures with the different levels. So it can be, for example, in Assassin's Creed, we tend to recreate the structures which are created 100 years back. Okay, bringing the Rome. Okay, all this. Style. See, the style of the game differs from one world to another world. So everything it actually have an effect in even the characters interface manual and package. Okay, so Western game will be different from uh, student graduating from a game art and design program. It appears to be they tend to use a different type of style. Okay. Uh, for example, while this game will be different from a small character game. Okay, you can see the difference here. This is one style. This is one style. You can see the realistic here as well as here as well. This is not 100% realistic. Okay, so that kind of thing. The physical appearance of the character. Okay, so for example, in Fable, the age, the character tends to transform as the age. Okay, when they come to engage in battle, exercise, drink results in different type of muscles, calves and beer bellies, all these things, wrinkles. So the environment also tend to have the same effect. Okay, so red faction, when you are walking with the snow, the same thing will be there. Yeah, it tend to grow the hair. So all these things. So when it comes to style, it has two main styles that need to work together in the game. Style of the object in the world or the style of artwork that will be depicting the world. Okay, style of the object and the style of the artwork that depicts the world. If you are going to look into the example, the neighborhood in the game would consist of Spanish style, while the style of the art could be anime or realistic. As long as these styles consistently used for its purpose throughout the game, there is no problem. But one place it is different and another place is different, there will be a problem. Okay, so many styles can be overused, have been overused in the game. So it's not a thing that we don't want to borrow a style or setting from another game. Try something new. Whenever we are going to try something new, it gives a good impression. So that the clients tend to have a good impression about that. Okay, so forgetting about the same old villains or environment, having a emotion to bring to the player. Okay, fear, excitement, amusement. I think this will give you even more good new style. Yeah. So as we have talked about space in the first week, and this space time, this environment, everything is interrelated. So when you're creating a level, when you're creating a gameplay, when you're creating a story, the space time, the style which we are going to use, the environment which we are going to use, all plays a very important role. So you can notice that the level design upon both gameplay and story elements. So the gameplay should travel with the story. Okay, so the game environment should act as a setting for a story, and the elements within it tells us a lot about it. Okay, you cannot have a periodic story happening at the current environment. Okay, so the environment should have spatial elements, natural resources, structures, vehicles, props, other objects, everything related to the story. So it should be used. It should be used by the inhabitants. The environment should be used by the environment. Yeah. So the environment gives us the information about the time by giving us clues, its origin, climate, place in the history. It can be a past, it can be present, it can be future. Cyberpunk tells about the future. Okay. The present world can be set by some other very good game which is given to us. GTA is a good example. Past can be given by the Assassin's Creed. Okay, the structural elements of the game are closely related to the gameplay. So that's basically the balancing act, the progression. challenge, strategy, the victory or loss condition. Everything has a very good interrelated relationship which gives to a very good level design. Okay, so when a game is having a clear level structure, it will allow us to take a full advantage of variety of game mechanics, and it can aid us in replayability. So the players will come again and again and they will not get bored. Yeah.